Good morning, guys. Another beautiful day. I'm going to talk to you today about a few things, not a whole lot of current events or anything like that, but I do want to recommend a project if you are looking for something to do, you're kind of bored. My daughter's art teacher gave her this really cool project to paint like Michelangelo. And so her job was to tape a piece of paper underneath a desk or a table, lay on her back, and paint the Sistine Chapel.
Draw.
Or she could draw. So she was using pens instead of paint because paint probably would splat in her face and we didn't want that.
Yeah, and I was using a pillow, so I wouldn't want to get any paint on my favorite pillow.
Definitely recommend a pillow if you're going to do that. So that's a little challenge to you if you're interested in trying it out and having your mom walk in and wondering why you're laying underneath the table. You can tell her that you're painting the Sistine Chapel. All right, so today what we're going to talk about, my plan today was to have the lesson be about the Compromise of 1877, talking about that really controversial election and how they came out of that. But I realized we need to go back in time. We need to go back to 1787 to the time of the Constitutional Convention. I wasn't with you at that time, but hopefully you guys learned a little bit about the 3/5 Compromise. If you don't remember what the 3/5 Compromise, this is what it was, because it gets overturned today with the 14th Amendment. So here we have a slave. And a slave was counted for 3/5 of a normal person. As they were developing the Constitution, they had to decide how would people be represented in Congress. How would they be represented for developing laws, and how would they be represented for developing taxation? How would they be decided how much they needed to contribute to the federal government? And the slaveholding states of the South wanted to have that, well, every person that was counted, in whether they were a slave or not, would be counted towards representation, so they would have more lawmaking power, but they didn't want to have the taxation on all the slaves. So they compromised with the 3/5 Compromise, saying that slaves would be counted for 1 to 3/5 of a person. I know this looks more like a half of a person, but ignore the person's head. He doesn't. The head doesn't count. So 3/5 of a person was what slaves were valued for back in 1787. Now flash forward to the 14th Amendment in 1887, and you have, or 1870, you have now the slave is going to count for a full citizen. This was going to be huge. This was a game changer. This meant that suddenly the southern states were going to have a lot more political power. They were going to be able to have power to make laws and affect the entire country in a way that they had never had before. Now, they weren't excited about giving the rights and citizenship to African Americans. They weren't excited about suddenly being taxed at that higher level, but at the same time, they had a huge amount of power coming to them, and they were eager to use that. They were coming through Reconstruction, where a lot of the northern states had put in place leaders in the South that represented northern interests. They had put leaders in the South that made laws that represented the northern interests. Remember, you want to think the North is Republican. The North is factories. The North is something that is against slavery and for rights of African Americans. In general, this is loose terms. The Democrats were the Southern. These were the slaveholders. These were the ones that liked the Confederacy. These are the ones that wanted to keep slaves and keep African Americans in a second-class citizenship place.
I think I would be one of the ones from the North.
You think you would be one of the ones from the North? I think I would have also, yes. I think that freedom and equality are really important values for our United States. So what happened, the Southern governments were starting to be controlled by Republicans, and once the representation in government was now a full 5/5, then they were going to have power to start taking that back. And so they started to do that with this. This is our population. Here, I've got all of these toys laid out to give you a bigger picture. If this is the individual representation, this is the population overall. I've got it divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. These sections before did not have any representation in Congress. These sections before were no longer not part of the picture. Once this happened, then there was going to be a lot more power. The North was terrified of this. The North realized that after the dust settles after the Civil War, after we get through passing the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which, by the way, during the years of the Civil War, the South was not present. The South was not going to be represented in Congress because they were a different country. They were effectively the Confederate States of America. They weren't sending anybody to help make these laws. So a lot of laws that were passed regarding westward expansion and tariffs and business interests and things that have helped the North were all being done without the South present. Now the South was going to be there in greater numbers because these guys that weren't represented before would now be used to count for how many representatives go into Congress for the South. The South was excited about this, and the North was terrified of this. This was a real change. That's it for today. Go ahead and make sure you log into Schoology to get your attendance taken. Keep working on your Reconstruction packet. We'll wrap up tomorrow with a bit of a review of the week, and then Monday we're going to dig into the Compromise of 1877, the real change, the big switch over with what happened with that election and how they compromised to change things. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll talk to you soon.